Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Dr. Manon.
Welcome to the Healers Café. And today I have with me Dr. Stephen Parks, and he is an emergency medicine physician. He's Director of Emergency Medicine Services at St. Margaret's Hospital. He's a former co-founder of EMP Act, so Impact Emergency Physicians. And he has an LLC and co-director of Rush Copley Emergency Department for 6 years. And what else can I tell you about him? He has also done public health and is doing something called pranic healing. So what I would like to start with, so first of all, welcome. I have so many questions for you, but I would like to know first, I mean, that's a little bit different path. So what got you first into emergency medicine, and what changed? What happened?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'm so happy, we connected so quickly, as we were off learning different skills. And what got me into emergency medicine, I always knew I wanted to help people from a young age. I was the helper. So whether it was helping my dad hold the screwdriver or the flashlight, or helping my mom with 3 siblings, or then getting into high school and helping people with their homework or learning, that was always the trend. And for someone who loves science and loved helping people, I was always told I was going to go into engineering. and I kind of like building things, but once I realized that I was kind of going to be in a cubicle doing that for a lifetime, I started looking for something else. And so my girlfriend in high school, her dad was a physician. And so I was like, oh, maybe I could do that. And that led me to medical school and led me to emergency medicine. You asked why emergency medicine. Really, I am kind of a high energy guy. So I like things that are fast paced, and I loved going all out for 8, 10 or 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours for 1 ER shift, and then being able to turn it off, not having to have a pager or anything at home. And, now looking back, it's been such a blessing because it's afforded me to learn and do and lead in emergency medicine, and then to take on all these other endeavors outside of the time frame of ER shift work. And that's led me to personal development, other ways of healing, functional medicine, pranic healing. A crazy guy went off and did 15 Ironmans and got a couple degrees in public health and business because I'm trying to figure out, why is the system not helping people the way it's supposed to? And when you keep digging, you find answers. And when you find answers, you eventually find solutions. And sometimes those solutions aren't in the traditional institutions. So here I am.
Okay, well, that's an interesting path. But you're still practicing, though, right? In emergency, like, do you have any COVID or what's happening right now with you?
Yep. So now I'm actually shifting full time into working with wellness and essential oils with people. So I still do 4 to 6 shifts in the emergency room per month. I shifted and was doing more when this COVID started because they needed help coordinating and their preparedness. So I was doing probably 3 times that, just more in leadership roles. And I've taken care of 60, 70 people with COVID positive tests. And I've seen people who are really sick, and that's been pretty much this extreme minority. And I've seen the vast majority of people who are really not sick, or they have flu-like symptoms. And I'll just say COVID is not the flu, it's not the same thing. But the fear with this virus is can be a gripping thing for people. So it's using some of these coaching skills and personal development skills with people to just get back to trust that they're going to be okay, because most people get to go home. They're okay, and usually, as long as they let them know, try not to watch too much of the news, then they are going to be okay.
Interesting you say that. No, because if you look at the news, it's all like, I mean, there's a whole thing with numbers, and I've been trying to follow different people looking at analyzing these numbers, because first it started seeming like it would be just insane, and then it didn't quite pan out to be true. But even when the numbers have shifted by the official statements, it seems like the fear and the media approach and the politicization of all this continues. And so people are living in fear. And I thought maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, and how that impacts
It is
the body.
I think just in talking to people and surveying just the general public and patients who come to the ER, I think people understand that there is a certain fear out there. I think what people haven't fully understood is what that fear does to our physical bodies. And I had someone a couple of weeks ago who came in and very healthy, very fit, works out every day. And when that person came in, their heart rate was 140, which is far, far stressed and higher than normal. And we did a long, expensive workup and everything turned out to be okay. But ultimately, we found that fear itself, stacked over time, was contributing to the chemistry of fear in the nervous system. So there are very real physical effects of fear. And this is the interesting thing about how fear works with our minds, bodies, and spirits is the brain is always looking out for the potential threats. That's the brain. That's not us. That's the brain. And it doesn't just look out for the threats. It rationalizes and judges and says, no, I'm justified in looking for these threats. I have to watch more news. I had one gentleman come in, poor guy. I felt so bad for him. He was not sleeping for about a week. And I asked him, I said, how much news have you been watching? And he said, oh, I'm really good about that. I am watching the morning news, the afternoon news, the press conference, and the other news. And I said, well, how many hours? He said, he was real proud. He's like 8 to 10 hours. And my heart sank because I'm seeing the physical things he's coming to the ER with. And I'm not saying it was 100% of why he was there, but to be honest, doing this for a while, I feel strongly that 80 to 90% of the physical symptoms he was experiencing was the fear, the meaning of fear that was made by the brain and then put into the chemistry of the body and the blood. And when I wrote on a prescription pad, I said no more than 1 hour of news a day was part of his treatment because it can absolutely make us sick. So I believe that strongly, and I've studied the science behind it, and it's absolutely true.
Mm. Can you expand on that a little bit more, so that people really get the physiology of fear, how that actually works?
Yes. So the best I can describe it in kind of an efficient way is imagine you're in cave person days, right? And you stick your head out of the cave and you see a saber-toothed tiger. So there is a immediate response, a jolting response of fear, and it serves a purpose. That purpose is to keep us alive, and it was evolved many, many years ago. So when that happens, there is an increase in blood pressure, there's an increase in heart rate, our senses are increased, there's adrenaline released in the body, and it can be very almost empowering of a feeling. And so that is designed to keep us safe. The problem then is when that fear system is activated over and over and over again. For ancient ancestors, when there was a saber-toothed tiger, they would run or fight or get eaten and be done. But within hours, the fear would be gone and the body would return to a resting, repairing state. Now, we're not having that. We have 24/7 screens always available to startle us and get attention. And some may be saying, well, these aren't saber-toothed tigers in these screens. Well, right. There's an element of that is meant to profoundly threaten our sense of safety and security. And I would argue it is more dangerous because there is a almost unconscious trickle effect of adrenaline, of stress hormone, cortisol in our body. And these are the things that get in the way of our immune system being able to do its job. And so by the very irony, all this news that says we need to be scared and diligent and do all these things, it is actually hurting our immune system. And the science is absolutely clear on that. Fear kills our immune system. And overworking, not sleeping, all these things, these are the foundations of wellness. And you can do all the right things, but if you're constantly living in fear, those right things are not going to pay the dividends that we think they are. So yes, it is mind-boggling to me still, as long as I've been studying this, and that's why it's such a powerful message of real compassion, even for someone who is angry or acting out or yelling or passionate about something, even having compassion for that other human, because they're going through often a stacking of fear response. So it takes leadership now to step up, stop ourselves, and act out of compassion for others and ourselves to break that fear response.
Yeah. And I really agree with that point too, because, you know, there's the fear of the virus, then there's the fear of, you know, the vaccine, because will it be tested? Will it work? Is it safe? Et cetera, et cetera. Will it be mandatory? You know, all of that, you know, and so you can find fear everywhere. And, oh, should you wear a mask? Is it worse because, you know, you keep your own, you know, your own bacteria there, or if you take it out, then you're being rude to others, and it's dangerous to others. So there's so many versions of and so many different studies that show different elements of parts. But the bottom line is fear is always there. You're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of all of this, and that fear of you know, of being judged, or the fear of whatever it is. If we're judging other people, we're not coming from compassion, we're actually changing our own immune system, right? Because I mean, definitely compassion affects our body.
It is. There's an activity I'll give sometimes when patients come in particularly stressed, or other physicians I'm coaching, or friends, and it's so simple. Maybe you've heard of this, but it's called the 3 gratitudes. All you do is when you get up in the morning, you think of 3 things that you're grateful for, usually something big, something small. I like to say something random or silly. And there's a chemistry behind this, and it is that when you really not just name them intellectually, but actually feel that gratitude, like, I'm so thankful to have this opportunity to speak and communicate, interact, and share this wisdom with other people. Like, we're in a time and age where we don't have to go to a movie studio to get things like this filmed. We can just set this up and do this and get it out there. So going to that gratitude is the antidote to fear. You cannot neurochemically be both fearful and in gratitude at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a muscle too. You know, you can go to the gym and work on building a muscle. Yeah. When you rehearse gratitude and those feelings over and over again, you're actually strengthening that wiring in the system, so that when we're approached with something that's potentially fearful, we're already a little bit at a place of gratitude unconsciously, and it makes us more resilient and more compassionate. So it is absolutely a practice that I invite and encourage people to do. It's free and it's powerful. So yeah, if we have more of that in the world, it would be a better place.
Yeah, definitely. And there was actually some studies now showing that compassion actually affects the vagus nerve.
Yes.
Right? And that's the parasympathetic part, the part that actually helps restore, heal the body well again, right? So when you're talking about constant stress mode, we can't shift off and go into parasympathetic very easily. And gratitude is, and love, you know, these feelings are really the thing that shifts it, or one of the things, but anyone can do it, like you say. So I love that you share that. So now you've got quite a different role, because you're in emergency medicine, and there you've got your adrenaline running for sure. And at the same time, it sounds like you're doing a very much needed education process, because at least my experience is that it's changing. You know, I've had many patients who are medical doctors, but there's a lot of the training that's at the base of what medical doctors do doesn't appear to take that holistic view of the person. And can you speak a little bit to that, and also how it may impact some of the decisions or what's happening in this current crisis?
Yes, it's so fundamental to what we've thought of as traditional Western medicine. You know, there's a 3 words that I think really explain the way I was traditionally trained, and that's diagnose, treat, and then repeat. And ultimately there's symptoms that patients will feel. And the symptoms, once they cause enough of a concern, then they'll go seek attention medically. And so often in the ER, that's where people come and they'll see me there in the ER and there's a particular symptom. And this works for traumatic things. I fell and really hurt my leg. I was in a car accident. These types of things, absolutely that works. But what we're seeing in the public health data for a few decades now is this constant growth of chronic inflammatory diseases. And that modality, that foundation and theorem of diagnose, treat, then repeat, even science of I'm going to change one variable and see what happens, it's outdated and it's ineffective because the body, particularly the healing modalities of the body, the immune system, is a complex system. And you can't modify one little part of that web without affecting the whole of the web. And this is what we're seeing now with side effects. So many medications have side effects. And so when you take a holistic approach, you take a partnership approach with, okay, what are the behaviors I can change? What are the foundational things that I can do as a person, as a patient, to change my health and take a holistic approach? How can I, as a physician, partner with my patient to help them see what they can do, to realize they have much more power than they were ever told? This is what we are stepping into in this new paradigm of healing. And it is an exciting time to be a healer because of this. And like any paradigm shift, we don't move into a new paradigm unless there's a major pain from the old paradigm. There's something that's not being addressed, and we can see that all the time. So we are absolutely moving towards a more holistic method.
And do you think that this realization and the frustration with the current paradigm, is that being felt? I mean, it's easy for me to say it's being felt by patients, but of course I'm going to attract the patients that, modern medicine or allopathic medicine did not work for. But what about the physicians in general? How are you seeing the discussion happening? Is there, because the schooling is very, very intense, and I don't just mean the education part, but the paradigm is very strongly, the war against the body or the war against the outside. Yeah. It's really very militaristic in its approach, right? So
yes, it's very ego-based, and the ego serves a very important purpose, and it did in the evolution of what traditional medicine came from. And it is that there's this pain, this problem, this sickness, this illness, and think back 100 years ago when people were dying of infectious diseases, and that was at that time the number one reason for shortened lifespans, and that has shifted incredibly. So it served a purpose to come from ego because it's driven innovation, it's driven people who want to heal, it's driven for them to study and work extremely hard to become more knowledgeable. And now as we're moving into an information age, knowledge is not what people need. As a medical student, you can click in 5 seconds, get the knowledge that you need. I'm not that old of a physician. I've been doing this only 15 years. And I still had to keep a note card, write the word down, go look it up in the dictionary later. And the time that took, the accumulation of knowledge is what people used to be rewarded for financially in medicine. And that's gone. Now what people need are human interaction, trust, a guide, someone that they believe in. And it's not just the spewing of the information. This is why there's an advent of mid-levels. And so what I see happening in people who have traditional trained physicians is there's a lot of frustration right now because there was a big investment of time, energy, and a lot of sacrifice to be a physician.
Hi, this is a small commercial break, and for you to let me know that you're enjoying these conversations, please go 1, to subscribe to my podcast, 2, write a review, because if you write a review on iTunes, more people know about this, and I can help spread the work, my work, but the work of everyone else I'm interviewing. And number 3, please sign up to my tips for your healing journey. And you can do that under www.drmanonboliger.com/tips. Thank you.
And now they're seeing that maybe we aren't as valued for that work. And we can complain about it, we can be frustrated about it, and I see that. But the people who are starting to step up and the leaders are the ones who are saying, well, how am I going to pivot to actually give the community, give society what it's needing, what it's craving? Yeah. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen patients come to me and say, do you have a practice? Can I work with you? Because you can't find doctors who are willing to just sit down and make me feel like you have all the time in the world. I don't have all the time in the world in ER, but I can make people feel that way because I care. Mm-hmm. And I've trained myself to not be flustered by all the noise that's happening, even if it's in the ER. I'm always aware, I'm tuned in. If someone's having a stroke, I can be there in a minute or a second. But presence is the new paradigm, because there's a healing modality of presence that really can be felt. So that's where we're moving towards. And I'm reminded also of something, if you've heard of a quote by Buckminster Fuller. I'm probably not going to say the quote exactly, but when there's a system that's grown so out of control and so dysfunctional, you don't change the system by attacking the system and trying to get it to change. You change the paradigm by building a new system, and then people will migrate to it. And that's what I believe is happening right now with these new healing modalities or ancient healing modalities. People are going back to what the limitations are in traditional medicine. So it's everything has a purpose, even the things we're frustrated with. It's how do we combine and expand our thinking that leads us to new avenues.
Yeah. No, because I often think of, the patients I've seen that are doctors and are frustrated by the limitations, because, and it's true of nurses too. And there's often not the time, or they don't have the skill of presence that creates the time. Because I feel like you understand when that time can stand still and it can expand just by being there. And I think that's that connection that in and of itself is so healing, and it's part of it. And also giving an opportunity for the patients to be heard, to really get it.
Yeah, to feel understood is so powerful, because it takes the fear out of your own unknown about what's happening in my body right now. And I really have to emphasize and agree so much with calling presence a skill. It is a skill. It is something anyone can learn with the right guide, the right mentor. But I didn't even know what presence was until I was Tony Robbins event, 4 years ago, and I've been practicing for 10 years and I never really was taught what presence was. And we all have that. We've been conditioned how to not be present with technology. So it doesn't mean we never knew how to do it. It's just we've gotten away from it. So
I'm curious too, what your opinion, or what you think about the now everything going much more online. Now, obviously, as an emergency medicine, you're going to be limited to the online version of that because you're have to be there. But what do you think of? Do you think that will increase the connection? Because in some ways, when you're on video, you're very close as well. Yeah. Or do you think that it? What's the impact that you think it might have?
It's interesting. I felt myself going through these phases already, and in a matter of a few months, to be honest, of regret and missing of not being able to be in person. And then I've been a participant in a couple programs where I was blown away at how we can actually be fully present in an electronic forum. I mean, right now I feel very present with you. We're on the same page, and there's a connection here. It's very real.
Mhm.
Because it's going through electronics, doesn't make it significantly less real to not be able to have presence. So, and the technology will evolve more. I was just seeing someone had built, I'll leave the name out of it, but had built a $3.5 million studio so that this person could hold a seminar for tens of thousands of people and to be able to have individual names of everyone there. So traditionally you're on a stage and you can kind of see and manage the crowd and communicate that way, even if you're a very powerful communicator. But now this person can actually see people's names anywhere. Everyone has a front row seat. So we can get frustrated about what's happening and look at what we're missing and losing out on, or we can choose to focus on what's the upside. And that's true in life, and it's true in that question. I see tremendous upside to this if it's used for good, and if our needs are communicated effectively. Because we can be boxed in by this technology, or we can be inspired by this technology, and it comes from the core, which is in our human spirit, how we choose to pursue that. So it's exciting times. There's the only thing that's guaranteed is change itself, and it is here in full capacity.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, no, I've definitely, I mean, my practice is to stay open to what I don't know yet, you know?
Yes.
So for me, it's like, I don't know what that's going to feel like. And I've experienced, like you're saying right now, I feel completely present to this discussion and to you. And I've been in seminars where it's like everyone's got the front row seat, and it's interesting. In yesterday I was doing I was on a podcast thing where I was trying to get attention of podcasters, and it's like you actually have almost more attention, when you're in this way. So if you can relax into it and you don't judge, you're going to communicate what you need to communicate, from the heart. And maybe it's a crash course in learning, to be your authentic self. And then we're all stuck at home. Which, is it stuck, or is it just a new relationship to, being in the place that we're living? And so I just see the opportunity in this. I was going to ask you, have you heard of Zach Bush?
Zach Bush. Oh, I feel like someone mentioned him recently.
Yeah, no, I just, he's new to me, but he really makes an incredible correlation of, the bigger system, the ecological system, and our internal system. And I just thought you might know. You'll love him if you look him up.
Yeah, that definitely piques my interest, just what you said right there.
Yeah, no, it's just, and he really talks about what people are experiencing, but without the politics, without the judgment. And it was actually, I watched a 2-hour interview that I ended up feeling actually even more at peace, which is incredible if you think with everyone's experience on, how much anxiety, unknown, change, and these are all triggers to people's insecurity.
Yes, and that is the key. It's not imparting insecurity to us. It's reminding us of some insecurity that hasn't been looked at, and it's a knot that's kind of under the surface that a lot of times we push down and haven't been aware of, and then it's brought out, and then that seemingly pain, and it can be very real and painful, is an opportunity to then address it and then think, what control do I have over this? What can I learn from this? And if needed, who can help me with this? I mean, this is accelerated evolution, really. And so, yeah, it's this idea of triggers. There is a tendency right now of, I've been triggered, it's your fault, outside of me, right? And really a trigger is a reflection of what's in us, because when someone causes us to have a reaction, the illusion is it's them. I can name any situation that was a trigger, and we could look at that situation and talk about how, well, we gave up our control over that situation, the control over ourselves. So there is an accelerated evolution that's happening before our eyes, where people are learning whether they realize it or not. That is what I believe personally, that the purpose of pain and challenge is to grow us so that we can be more and give more ultimately. So.
Yeah, and I do feel optimistic that that is where we're going. That there is definitely, because of the suffering and because of the shifts that people are needing to go through, it brings up so much, and there's such an opportunity to change. If there's leaders talking about it and giving that as an option, because that's definitely not what you hear in the media.
No, they're not there to educate and empower. They're there to get views and drive attention spans and drive revenues. So.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point, because again, people talk about conspiracy, but and I did my law degree, my master's, I was looking at alternative medicines and the role, and how it all fit together, in the Flexner report and all that. And I'm looking at this again, going, it's interesting. If you look at the ownership of the media, and you look at the ownership of the pharmaceutical companies that could benefit, and then you look at the idea of public health, and you wonder, is that the driving force? And I don't believe it is. That's my feeling inside me.
You describing something that was the driving factor for why I went off and got 2 more master's degrees after I was always already a physician, because I had to get to the bottom of these questions, and it was very difficult to research them through Google searches, right? And yeah, I can go down as far down this rabbit hole as anyone would be interested in. There's a couple books that I could refer you to. One is called Bad Pharma by Ben Goldacre. Goldacre, I believe. This is the profound realization. What I learned in medical school, and how I continue to learn in continuing education, medical education, it's based on information that's fed to me. And we're able to see studies, and there's always a cry, well, there's no evidence for that, or this evidence is this. And there is a conflict of interest that even, I would say, the vast majority, 90+% of physicians aren't aware of in how science is performed. Particularly in the US, I can speak to, and I imagine internationally and globally. And it is that pharmaceutical companies will run multiple studies, and no one's required to report the negative studies. They go into a box, or they're destroyed, and no one ever sees them. And what does and does not get published, there's an extreme conflict of interest from the editors of prestigious journals. So we could call it conspiracy, but this is why I've shifted gears, and why, if push came to shove, I'd be willing to step away from a livelihood in order to practice a way that I believe is more sustainable and, frankly, more effective at a core holistic level, because that's what people need right now. And it can be scary for many physicians to go against the grain in any modality, to go against the grain and what seems to be the status quo. But when you look, you will find that there are many people who have the same feeling and are asking the same questions and looking for the same answers. And the answers are there. You just have to look in non-traditional channels. And often that's books or individual YouTube channels from someone who's a proven, reliable source. But books are the place that they're the most nuanced discussions. It's not going to be in headlines. It's not going to be in social media posts generally. So yeah, it's one of those things. Just I encourage everyone, if you have interest or you have a feeling, just explore it, see what happens.
Could you, because I think we might have cut out a little bit, can you and go ahead and give a couple more examples if you could? And maybe what I'll do when we're finished, I'll post it also underneath your interview so people can get these places. Do you have some in particular that you
Yeah, it's to be. I think the number one for me is Audible has been so helpful because I can, during the drive that's normally downtime, I can knock out a book in a few days.
Mhm.
Um, so that's why I mentioned, that one book, Bad Pharma, was a recent one I just recently looked into. I mean, I could give you so many different books. Another one just I recently looked into. It's called. A lot of people have heard of Dr. Joseph Mercola. Um, and while I don't agree with everything that he said, there's definitely value in a lot of things that he's done in research. His more recent book is called EMF asterisk D.
Mhm.
It talks about electromagnetic fields,
Mhm.
and I was blown away by this book. I was always taught and raised how ionizing radiation is the only radiation that affects our cells and can cause cancer. Um, and actually, right behind this screen, there's a Tesla coil that I use actually for my own healing modalities, and it's based on the foundations of our bodies are electromagnetic beings, and electromagnetic fields are more than just radio waves. Uh, I go on a little bit of a tangent, but for decades we didn't realize the damage that X-rays can do to the human body, and
That's right.
similar with smoking. I mean, this went on for 30, 40, 50 years. The cancer and suffering and pain and loss of life from tobacco. And only in the last 15 to 20 years have we realized that as a humanity. And um, I am concerned that we are going to look back at these times and see in so many ways that we are practicing cave person medicine in a lot of ways, with the types of pharmaceuticals we're using in certain modalities, and um, the lack of non-conflicted and genuine studies. So yeah,
Mhm.
we could probably do a whole podcast on this topic
I
alone.
was going to say, yeah, I'd love to get into that. Yeah, no, but it's good. Again, I think people don't need to be afraid of information, and I think this is like, we have confirmation bias. So every time, we speak a certain way, I mean, I get slapped in the face. It's like, oh, you've got confirmation bias. You're just sharing only the things that serve you. And it's like, yes, I get it. And I want to look at everything. I mean, I really do want to look at all sides. And just because one perspective is the predominant one, I have certainly learned in history that that doesn't mean it's the right one, So, yeah.
There was there's something that I'll share that was passed on to me in the pranic healing modality, but a teacher I love and respect so much, he always start off just the intro class. He'd say, okay, take your hands and kind of make a circle. Say, okay, this is one level of truth. Okay, now make a bigger circle. Okay, there's a second level of truth, and then make a bigger circle. There are many levels of truth to everything. And the normality that we have now is just one level of truth. One person's perspective is one level of truth. You can have overlapping levels of truth,
Mhm.
and it doesn't make either one of them wrong. The brain's always looking for, is this right or is this wrong? And
Mhm.
the truth is there's multiple perspectives. And even in things that we're so sure are wrong, we can, if we look for it, we ask the right question, we can find truth often in that.
Mhm.
Rarely are things dichotomous, purely, yes or no, or right
Mhm.
or wrong. So yes, that curiosity to always look for another angle of the truth is the pursuit. That's why we're in this thing we call life, to learn and figure things out further. So yeah, there's another book here, actually. I think it's right here called Curious. Ian Leslie. This book is phenomenal. Oh,
Yeah.
phenomenal. I've a few of my physician coaching clients have read this. They said this is the most transformative, life-changing book they've ever read, and it's thin. So, and it gets to this key piece of, if
Mm.
you can instill a deep curiousness and curiosity of just wanting to learn more, especially about the things you don't agree with. I
Mhm.
have yet to find a downside to it, other than it may take some time. But
Mhm. Well, it's funny. I had a bit of an eye opening in this whole experience because having looked at history, you start to see patterns, which does confirm bias, but it also alerts you to the possibilities of what, what might actually be going on. So you're opening. But the numbers thing is really, I had a belief that on some level numbers are numbers, and this entire circumstance opened me up to, wait a minute here. You can work with numbers. You can look at different aspects of it, and that will actually change what you're studying, what you're trying to prove. And that's where I started thinking, well, why is there not more transparency about numbers? Because numbers are not that complicated. Like, math
think,
is,
right?
you would think.
So, this is one of the most profound realizations I had. Okay, I've had a biology degree and then went to medical school, and you study statistics in both. I remember taking a psychology statistics course in college that had essays. Imagine a statistics course with essays. And then I went back to business school and we took statistics again. And then I'm finding myself at Hopkins learning statistics again. And I don't know, whatever 7th, 8th, 10th statistics course, I finally got the depth where the professor said, listen, when you read a study and you're shown numbers, you almost think, well, it's the number, that's the real number. And whenever you introduced humans to interpretation of numbers, there is so much bias that can be baked into how the numbers are presented and the numbers themselves, that it can be so deceiving to challenge. You think that numbers can't be challenged, but when you can actually say, well, what's the context of these numbers? Where do these numbers come from? What is the interest of the person presenting me these numbers? Is this the number that really matters for this scenario, or is it a ratio? We always talk about what's the denominator. So I'll just use this because it's going on now. Okay, we have a case count. Well, cases compared to what's the denominator? Is it cases per tests? Is it cases per population? These things make a profound difference to the meaning of these numbers. And heck, I had so much schooling, I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't have that realization until the third graduate degree. And you don't need a graduate degree to have this realization. What you need is common sense and the ability to be curious and inquisitive. And just, it doesn't have to be a problem that you're questioning things. I see it as a huge asset. It is a diligence that I would suggest is going to serve anyone. And just when you see numbers, just always question, is this something that makes sense? If it doesn't make sense, then dig a little deeper or ask someone else. And if you're looking for a different answer, then ask someone else. And always try to understand as many angles as we can. Because I just had a Facebook post on yesterday. I was replying to someone about this concept of the news isn't helpful to us. And someone replied with an idea of, well, the numbers are numbers, and talking about this very issue. And I think part of my response was, numbers are the most deceiving apparent and presumed fact because we think they're numbers. And a lot of us are scared of numbers, whether it's finances or we haven't been trained in statistics. But we are inherently trained in trust. And we all have these little alarm bells that go off if something doesn't quite make sense. And when you learn to listen to those, or you just give yourself permission to listen to those, it leads us in, I think, a productive path. So.
Yeah, no. And I think, that ability, that critical thinking is, and it's funny, a lot of people think critical thinking, and it's like, I'm a super, joyful, happy person. And I do lots of critical thinking. I question just about everything. I think my first word is why. Yes. and I think that's to embrace that and try and stay without judgment as long as you can. Just know that, like you said, I love that, it's this, and then there's this, and then there's that. And I think, as long as we stay connected and we and we keep learning in that sense, and trust that piece. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
Like there's, and instead of saying, well, no, they wouldn't do that. That's like the anti-conspiracy theory. It's another belief. Like,
Yes.
We
call them in coaching, we call them BS for belief systems.
Yeah. Anyway, well, look, I think our time is definitely up, but it's been so wonderful having this conversation with you, Stephen. It's, I think hopefully it will help lots of people who are in fear or just confused about all this.
Pleasure is mine. This is why both of us are doing this work. And anyone watching, I encourage you to consider, think about what part really stuck with you, and one or two parts, and who else could benefit from the information that you've learned or the realization that you just experienced. And just offer that. You don't have to ever push something on someone. Just say, hey, I was thinking about you during this time, and this might be something maybe I found it valuable. Maybe you'd find this valuable too. That's the kind of sharing that has a ripple effect. Exactly. And it changes the world when we start sharing from that place.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. All right, talk soon.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Dr. Manon. For more information, go to drmanonbollinger.com.